I'm Danny Whitescorn and this is Behind the Title. I'm delighted to be joined by Daniele Fiandaca today. His organisation, Hard as Nails, is doing some amazing work to destigmatise all the challenges that exist with men's mental health today.
This woman said to me, I just want to let you know, you saved 2 men's lives. And I was just gobsmacked. I can't do the work I do around inclusive leadership without being vulnerable. When you are vulnerable, people just appreciate it.
We're covering some really important topics, so please come along, and I must advise there is a trigger warning to this episode. Daniele, welcome to Behind the Title. It is wonderful to see you again and to have you on the podcast.
It's wonderful to be here. Thank you.
I guess for those that don't know you and what you do, it would be great if you could just give a little introduction to you, your background, what you're up to now, and why it was important for you to come on to the podcast today.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say I've had a bit of a squiggly career. As my friends Helen and Sarah would say, I used to work in advertising. So I was the CEO of Profero. I worked there for 10 years. I was managing partner and head of innovation at Shell. So I've been in the industry, but I left the industry about, I think it's nearly a decade ago now, to move into inclusion and diversity, which is quite an unusual choice for a white, straight, neurotypical cisgender man without disabilities. But I ran a business called Utopia with Nadia Powell for 5 years, and for the last 3 years I've been running Token Man Consulting. And I do 3 things really. I do inclusive leadership. I'm really proud. I work with Roxanne Hobbs on Channel 4, for example. We engage men with inclusion and diversity, so that means supporting men, inspiring men to give them the tools for what is a changing world, and then actually recruiting men to become better allies and agents of change. And the third string to my bow, which is probably where I'm going to hopefully spend most of next year, is coaching. It's just been, for me, qualified to become a coach 3 years ago. One, I didn't expect people to think I'm a good coach, but it turns out that the people I've coached loved what I've done with them. So, and it's just been amazing just to see how much people can move from the first session to the 6th session. It's transformative for people.
I was given a coach a short while ago, and it was interesting. It was different. We'll get into that in a second. And why was it important for you to come on the podcast today?
Firstly, if someone like Curtis Weir introduces us and say we need to speak, I know there's something behind that. He's I used to work with him at Profero. He's a lovely man, wonderful man. And if he says we're going to connect, we're going to connect. And I think when we spoke, firstly, the podcast Behind the Title is really interesting because to a certain extent, I haven't really had a title for quite a while now. Co-founder's not really a title. I know some people have small business, call themselves CEOs. And that's just not me, right? I just, for me, I found that titles often hinder rather than help. But also that kind of, it's really interesting because I used to run Creative Social, which was a collective of creative directors, and I tried to create a new series of stuff. We did so many events, but one was called Creative Social at Home, and it was the fund foundation was basically going to people's creative directors' homes and get them to do a talk in their house. So wow. I actually did the pilot in my flat, and I had 30 people in my flat, and I did about collecting, and I sold vinyl toys. So I think firstly the title I think the reality is, and we'll go on to, it also reminded me of what happened when I left Profero. I'd been at Profero for 10 years, and it'd become my identity to a certain extent. It became everything. It was everything to me. My identity was so wrapped up in it. But what I didn't expect after leaving was 2 months after leaving, people just said to me, "Wow, you look so much better." That was the first time I'd realised just how much stress I'd been under for the last decade. It was a decade. We built an agency I joined, there's 22 of us. By the time I left, there's 300 of us with 10 offices around the world, each of which I was, heavily involved in setting up. It was relentless. And while I had that amazing energy and I loved it and it didn't feel like work, I hadn't realised just how much stress I've been putting myself under. And also, I've had mental health issues myself, probably about 3-4 years ago. And I've also seen the benefit of people leaning in, asking the right questions. But I've also seen some of those people who I think should have known better not supporting because of what I represented.
Was there a time then in that period where you were in a senior position, and actually even current day, where on the outside everything polished veneer exterior, but on the inside feeling the opposite?
The answer is no, and that's because I can't do the work I do around inclusive leadership without being vulnerable. So if I go back to 10 years ago, I had no idea that stress was putting on me. I didn't leave because of that. I left for other reasons. So I don't think there was ever a time. And listen, I have many privileges, but I'm also privileged, right? We did eventually sell Profero, and I made good money from that. So I've never really felt the pressure or felt the need to show a kind of fake. And now, because I've been doing what I've been doing for 8 years, I'm really open at the moment. I'm struggling with work, really struggling with work. We're not, there's a number of reasons for that, but, the reality is the EDI industry is really, under pressure. That's partly because of Trump coming from America. I think we're seeing people feeling that they don't need to lean in anymore. But I also think the EDI industry has to take some responsibility for the fact that it hasn't meaningfully engaged white straight men. And also I think it's left behind a whole other marginalised group, which is the white working class men. So I think we are going to start, hopefully we'll start to see a shift where people do start engaging men. But, I talk about vulnerability. I can't not, I wrote a post on LinkedIn a month ago saying that over the summer my mental health was really bad. And it's just amazing just how much people appreciate hearing that. That's why these conversations are so important, because we have to understand that being vulnerable doesn't, even though it's vulnerability by definition is exposing yourself to emotional or physical harm, the reality is when you are vulnerable, people just appreciate it. And I just did an event on Wednesday. I didn't think I was going to cry on stage, but I did cry on the stage. We'll probably talk about the story today at some point. I've just had so many notes from people just saying, thank you for that. Thank you for showing me what vulnerability can be, and that it's not a weakness.
When I launched Behind the Title, I don't think I ever expected, I think as you just alluded to, I don't think I'd ever expected the sort of feedback that I've had around either someone identifying, someone saying thank you, it's really helped me with a specific topic. And one of the questions we ask is, was there a time in which you wish you'd said something different? You wish you'd spoken up and out? And I think that we are in an era now where that's changed and people are more vocal. But all of a sudden, when you provide people the platform like, you're here today, unanimously everyone says the same thing, which is, I wish I wouldn't have chased the career.
Yeah.
I wish I wouldn't have put that before everything else. Family, friends, children. Mental health, I think, is a really difficult subject. It doesn't matter whether you're male, female, whether you're gender neutral, whatever it may be. It's difficult, and it can handicap you in so many different ways. And the idea of just two people coming together is what I've learned through my journey in recovery. One person sharing their experience with another, and all of a sudden you just feel like there's a weight lifted because someone suddenly identifies. There's an openness and honesty. Now, I won't spoil your thunder. I will let you introduce Hard as Nails, because that's what I want to talk about today, is the impact that can have on everyone's mental health, but specifically men's mental health.
It's worth saying that I do lots of men-only spaces. I run Brave Spaces across the year, men-only spaces, and they're places for people to have conversations they wouldn't normally have. And we've covered things like grief, sex and intimacy, the changing nature of men, what it feels like leaning into inclusion, diversity, friends and family. We've covered absolutely everything. And every single session I do with men only, we start with a feelings wheel, and I get people to identify a feeling. And again, it depends where they are on their journey. If it's the first time they're doing it, I just say, just maybe choose how you're feeling now. But if you want to be a bit more vulnerable, choose a feeling over the last 2 weeks that's made you feel really uncomfortable. Think of a time where you felt uncomfortable and identify that feeling. And then I put them in pairs to talk about it. The impact is unbelievable. And these are men who often have never spoken to anyone in their organisation about their feelings, and even their partner about their feelings. Bell Hooks wrote the brilliant book Will to Change, and Bell Hooks, if you don't know Bell Hooks, she's the first feminist that understood the damage the system did on men as well, and did a lot of work. But she talks in that book specifically about men becoming disconnected with their feelings. And I'm spending, a lot, along with a lot of other men. I run a group called Good Men with James Routledge. So we're trying to bring all those men together to actually create change. And that's going to be part of that change, getting men more emotionally literate. Coming back to Hard as Nails. So Hard as Nails, I'm co-founder of Hard as Nails. I co-founded it with Sam Conniff. If anyone hasn't read Sam's book, Be More Pirate, you should. It's a brilliant book.
Synopsis?
Basically, he goes into the history of pirating and shows what we can learn from it. And actually, if you look at things like diversity, inclusion, diversity, pirates were some of the most inclusive and diverse people ever. Yeah, including, someone who's lost a leg, they'd get benefit, they get disability benefit. And, women had the vote to write as, in that community hundreds of years before women had the vote to write in the UK, for example. So it's a brilliant book that just says, just breaking those rules, and it's an amazing book. But we started Hard as Nails really as we're basically encouraging people to get their nails painted, to open up meaningful conversations around healthy masculinity, harmful stereotypes, and male mental health. That's a synopsis. We've already done. We did a couple of pilots, which were extremely successful. I would have said, going back to the mental health bit, the bit that I'm really grappling with at the moment is, I think most of the men that stepped forward in those pilots had already hit rock bottom at a certain point. They understood the damage the system did on them, but often it takes a man to hit rock bottom in order to understand that. I want to hit them before. I want to get to them before they hit rock bottom, because as we know, some people that they hit rock bottom don't make it out. Right, the suicide rate is shocking here in the UK and around the world. And then we did a big pilot, 400 people we've recruited. That was incredible. I think we did so much research. We did pre, post, during. We had the lovely thing was we had a WhatsApp group during the 2 weeks. 110 men on that WhatsApp group. We had over 1,000 messages in 2 weeks. And just the conversations were just so heartwarming. People sharing their experiences, how they were feeling. One gay guy, it was just lovely. He just said, I was really hesitant coming into this because, a large proportion of people went into were straight white men. I was really hesitant coming into this. I just didn't know what to expect to be in this kind of group. And he said, just said, do you know what? You've just made me feel so welcome, and it's been so inclusive, but also I've just seen this generosity of spirit, this kindness that I just didn't expect. You've actually changed come back to that stereotype. I can imagine if you're a gay man, you've had a lot of harm from white straight men. Yeah, so I understand that. So to create a space where actually we had these just wonderful conversations, and it even started getting. What was lovely after the first week, you started getting to nail tips. What type of nails are you doing? What colours? People started taking photos, and I would say and we're going to talk about your experience as well, because I want to hear about it. But I would say that a quarter of the men who get their nails painted will do it again. It's worth just quickly going to the origin story. So Sam went to a Harry Styles concert with his daughter, and he said to his daughter, "It's your weekend. We can do whatever you want. She said, Dad, I'd love to go to a nail salon with you and get our nails done. So he went, he got really cool chrome gels, really happy. They went to the Harry Styles concert, loads of people wearing nail polish. That's the thing for stylists. Harry Styles has his own brand called Pleasing. So, he really has embraced it. And then he got to Sunday night and he said to his daughter, I've got a week worth of meetings. Could you take this off? And she just laughed at him. She said, Dad, you can't. I can't. It's shellac. You have to go back to the salon. He goes, but I can't. I haven't got any time to go back to the salon. So he had to wear them for the whole week. And so he then started opening up conversations. And Sam being Sam, didn't know what to do with it, but he just wrote a blog post that says performative nonsense or something interesting. And then he just wrote a kind of faux press release for a campaign called Hard as Nails. And what was really interesting is I read it. Someone that I coached in one of the men's group I did shared it. And I read it and I said, Sam, we should speak. It took us about 3 months to speak. And I just said, Sam, I think you've got something in there, but I don't think it's allyship. Because I think if it was allyship, it'd be performative. It'll be, look, I'm painting my nails.
What do you mean by performative?
It's just a gesture without actually creating any change, fundamentally. So, brands do it the whole time, turning their flag to the rainbow. It does have an impact, right? And we've seen this year when it happened and companies stopped doing it, what a negative impact in seeing that. So there's a benefit of that. But if you're putting your logo as a rainbow flag every Pride and not changing, one, how people from the LGBTQ plus community feel within your business, but also how your communications, your media actually portray those people, that's performative, right? You're not making any difference. And I just said to him, I don't think it is about allyship, but I need to do it in order to understand. And I did it between Christmas and New Year. So I didn't have business meetings. So I had a very different experience. I painted your nails last week.
You did.
So tell me what that felt like and what that's done.
It's interesting. As I said, I grew up with a mum who had a beauty nail salon. And so I was, when you generously offered your time to come on the podcast, you said, could I come and paint your nails as well? And so we can talk about, Hard as Nails and what the initiative's about. And I don't think I had any reservation whatsoever. And when we were sitting down, I think I said to you when we were there, we were in a public place. I think I felt more uncomfortable less about you painting my nails, but more about putting other people out because we were painting nails in that environment. And that was the first thing. And actually the whole way through, I was just conscious. In fact, I didn't say it there, but there was a woman directly opposite us who kept on kind of turning her nose up. And I couldn't tell if that was because of the smell or perhaps it was just the perception of two men, painting nails, or indeed it was just that's not the environment to do that sort of thing. It was so nice to just sit and, we were gassing away about whatever. Now, when we left, I had to go and get something from a shop nearby. And I was standing in the shop and the guy was helping me and my nails were visibly on show. And I remembered I was going to send you a message, but I didn't. But I remember saying to the guy, I just painted my nails for an experiment, social experiment. And he was like, well, I don't care.
Did you really say that?
I did.
No, but I'm saying he said I don't care.
Oh, yeah.
I love it. I love that. Well, you don't need to justify it to me. Yeah.
I think I said this to you as well, like on the day and also just before. I go through stages where I bite my nails. Terrible habit. In fact, I curse my dad because I got it from him. And for years I've tried to stop and tried different methods. And so actually, after you painted them and as I was kind of walking, I was looking at them and you can really see the imperfections in your nails if you've got them painted or you've got something on there if you bite them. And so I got home and I'll be honest with you, I took it off. I didn't take it off because I felt uncomfortable. Maybe I did take it off because I felt uncomfortable. Maybe I did. but I think I felt more uncomfortable because my nails felt dirty because they were like half bitten. And now, this is the kicker, right? Is on Tuesday afternoon, I booked an appointment at the nail salon because I hadn't bitten my nails for a few days and I didn't want to bite them again. And so I went in there and I got a manicure. I didn't get them painted, but I got a manicure. And it was the most liberating experience I've had as me time for a long moment. I sat there for 25 minutes and they were doing their thing and got a nice little hand massage with some, aloe vera or some, cocoa buttercream. I don't know what it was. And I walked out and for the whole week I haven't bitten my nails. And so what it did teach me is a couple of things is number one, a nail salon is not just for a female. Mm. Number two, it's helped me form a better habit, in that for 5 days now I've not bitten my nails. And I know that if I keep up long enough, I will probably change that behavior long term. And number three, I can now pass that on to someone else and encourage them. If they just want to take a bit of me time and look after themselves, you can go into a nail salon. Now, I'm not necessarily sure if that's the aim of the initiatives, but
it partly is. So and that's why we put the male mental health bit in there because, and it's also what it's really interesting. You say that nail salons just not for men. I mean, I did a talk at another agency recently, and the opening question is, how did you go from advertising CEO to become a nail technician? Because I'm now a trained nail technician, but when you do the training, there's a part of the section which says, if a man comes in, they're not going to get polish. It actually says that in their stuff.
Wow.
So you just need to put clear polish on it, and I'm like going, wow, you're just making this broad assumption from the outset. I believe in breaking stereotypes, so I'm in the process of breaking stereotypes. I wore a skirt on stage on Wednesday, for the first time.
Like a kilt, skirt?
No, skirt. I'll show you the photo afterwards. But, even then, and again, we'll come back to, these kind of stereotypes, why it works so well. These kind of stereotypes are so ingrained. Yeah, that Roxanne, who I run it with, 2 years in a row, we had the biggest discussion we had. And it definitely wasn't heated. We have such an amazing relationship. But the biggest discussion we had was whether I could wear a skirt or not. And 2 years in a row, the answer, we came up to it together, was no. But this year, we managed to go, let's get everyone in the audience to vote on whether I should wear a skirt. I didn't put I wasn't allowed to lead. I just said, just vote. And it was beautiful because I know the people in that room, and 77% said yes. Yeah, 11% said no, 12% said unsure. But I did feel the uncomfortableness of it. Yeah, I did go into the room. I could see people looking. There was a lot of people who've come up to me since saying, one person in particular said, at a break when I was doing a workshop for a client, said, I just wanted to apologise because I'd assumed you're gay. And I said, firstly, don't apologise. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with being gay. So the fact you thought, okay, that's absolutely fine. And actually, I take it as a compliment because, again, it's a stereotype. But most gay men I know are really stylish. So I'm like going, yeah, it's like so. But please, there's no need to apologise. But it's interesting, isn't it, how we stereotype people based on that. In fact, when I did my first school the other day, I painted 34 out of 36 the boys' big nails. But I asked them all at the beginning of each boys' circle, I said, how many of you assumed I was gay? 90% assumed I was gay. People make these assumptions. So anyway, when I came back from that experience, my own experience, I said, Sam, this isn't about allyship. This is about masculinity. This is a visual representation of the man box, where the man box are the things that put men into boxes. So, and it is one of the pillars. One of the pillars is physical attractiveness. Men need to look good, but God forbid if they actually did something like grooming, painted the nails. And again, I had someone made a comment the other day, you've got more rings than your wife. It wasn't meant to be a compliment. Let's just put it that way. And so for me, and it's like, why, if anyone, and we do know this, I just painted, for International Men's Day, I painted 5 men's nails from basically who worked in biker bars. Yeah, and they were all, tats, rings, and all of them, all but one, had painted their nails regularly before. And they're like, do you know what? This is not an issue for us because we grew up being othered.
Wow.
Yeah, and you go to that stereotype. They were just the most lovely people, and you get this stereotype of you think, wow, and it's the complete opposite. And so stereotypes are really harmful. Why is such a powerful question? It's the first question I recommend people go, why have you got your nails, but why? Why not? I actually say, why not? Yeah, and so they have to force them to think about what is it that's going through it. And I think what really, and it's really interesting, is if you think about this experiment, and because we were following everyone through the whole 2 weeks because we had the WhatsApp group. What happened was people came in really excited, got their nails painted. A lot of them felt very uncomfortable. I mean, the best example is, have you read Billy No Mates, the book Billy No Mates? It's by Max Dickens. So Max, a lovely man, he went to get married and he realised he didn't have a friend to ask to be his best man. Yeah, and we know there's a loneliness epidemic across men, and so he did research around and wrote the book Billy No Mates. But he was part of our prototyping, when we did the kind of pilot. And I remember him telling us afterwards that he got his nails painted and we all did it together at Shoreditch Nails. That's where I trained. It was a lovely experience. The first one we did was 6, the second one was 14. I can't tell you what a wonderful experience was, having the whole salon full of men, getting their nails painted, excited, but he got them painted. And then that night he was meant to go to see his supports Manchester United. I'm not going to judge him. Mm-hmm. And he was meant to go and see a match. And he got to and didn't really think about it, went towards the pub, put his hand on the door. And as he put his hand on the door, he saw his nails and he went, nah, and just went home. And he wasn't in the mood to get the stick or to justify so what's really happened with this experiment is, firstly, men come into it thinking, we saw this on the WhatsApp, men coming into it thinking, I'm going to get these nails painted and then I'm going to have meaningful conversations with other men. So it's about them. I'm helping them. What happens is, they'll get to day 2, day 3. No one said anything. No one said anything. And they're like going, so what they have to do, but they're feeling uncomfortable. They're still feeling really uncomfortable, right? Most of them are still feeling. So what they have to do is they have to take that finger and they have to point it back at themselves. And they have to go, what is it that stopped Max going into the pub? And so while I keep on saying it's not an allyship campaign, it is about men getting to understand how the system hurts them, what they can do around that. So I spend a lot of time talking about the man box. I get people looking at the man box and going, okay, which of these things really impact you the most? How can you combat them? So, one of the 7 pillars is, stereotypical gender roles. So men are breadwinners and work, and women are carers. And once you start seeing that, you go, okay, what are we doing that fits within that stereotype? What could we change?
I'm intrigued to know, from all the conversations you've had, are there certain triggers within the men that you've spoken to through your experiment that tend to take people into a worse place with their mental health than others?
Of those men that I know in the corporate space who have had mental health breakdowns, they've all been related to one thing, and that's the pressure to be the breadwinner. That need to provide for your family and the stress of that and the worry of that. Today, my wife is the breadwinner. She's earning more money than I am. And that's the first time in our time together, 25 years, and I'm feeling it. And it's not logical. It's not, I know all the stereotypes. Doesn't mean I don't feel it. It's so ingrained with us. So I think that, and again, coming back to what we've created is we create a system where I hear people say men are selfish. I'm lucky. I get to speak to, most of the men I work with are wonderful, right? But actually, even if I look at my dad, for example, my dad worked so hard, but he never bought himself anything. He never treated himself. He never had anything. He did everything he could for us, me and my brother. There's absolutely no doubt about that. And actually, I see it time and time again. Men are so focused on their careers because they feel that need to do the breadwinner. They often drop everything else. And that does damage on them and everyone around them. And so we've created this space where, and we mentioned it before, but very few people on their deathbed said, I wish I worked harder. Yeah, I think the number one reason for men is I wish I'd spent more time with my kids. I think you spend, on average, and this for all the parents listening to this might be a very depressing stat for you, but it's also a stat that's really important, especially if you've got young kids, is do you know how long, if you think about a parent's lifetime with their kids, what percentage of the time have they spent together in total by the time they hit 18? Do you know the figure?
Oh, it's a good one. What percentage that they've spent together?
So up to 18, what percentage does that represent of the time you've spent together their whole lifetime?
20%?
90%. So once they hit 18, you've only got 10% left. So if you've got to the top of your career and your kid's 16, 17, you've missed the biggest chunk of time you'll ever spend with them.
It's funny, I went the other way. I thought I was looking for a low number.
No.
But it's what the point I now understand is, as you said, like
you've missed it. You've missed it. And also, we're seeing, we know from the stats, a man who, I was speaking to someone from the police force yesterday. He was talking about a progressive police group who have given their dads 3 weeks paternity pay. That's progressive in the police force. The police force generally get 1 week fully paid, 1 week statutory.
Wow.
And we wonder why these men, we're seeing these bad apples in the police force, which we are, and there's bad apples in everything. But we're seeing a system because we're perpetuating the system. We're not getting them. The men that I know that have spent 3 months, I'm childless, not by choice, so I don't have kids, but I speak to a lot of fathers. But those men that did spend that time, the impact on them is unbelievable.
Do you feel, though, between what you're doing and lots of other organisations around men's mental health, versus this female empowerment and getting kind of more women in senior positions, do you think they're at odds with each other?
They shouldn't be. Yeah.
So are we not creating the same problem over there?
A lot of it's pendulums, right? You get a pendulum. The pendulum had to go that way. If you think about the barriers that women still face in the workplace are immense. And if I go back to when I started Token Man was really started specifically to help create gender equality. I soon moved in just inclusion and diversity, but a lot of the work I still do is getting men to be better allies and agents of change and creating workplaces that are truly inclusive for women and other historically marginalised groups. That's really important. I don't think they should be mutually exclusive. Everything that I've learned is that the things that men need to do and learn to become better leaders, to become more inclusive, to become better human beings, are the same things that will actually help everyone else. Yeah, if we can teach men to be more vulnerable, more empathetic, more self-aware, they're going to be better leaders in the workplace, right? And in fact, of that, the people, I've done 2 surveys. One is on men leaning in, and one was on people who are trying to be male allies. 97% said that as a result of the work they've done, because it does take time, they're either a better leader and or human being. Who wouldn't want to be that? Yeah. Right? I think where we have lost sight is I do think, and I feel it, I really feel it with the people I speak to. We're seeing it with young boys. I think men are being demonized right now. I don't think they're being celebrated in any way of any form of life. People say to me every day is International Men's Day. My God, even as a white straight man, it doesn't feel like that. Even though I have huge privilege and I recognise those privileges.
Well, it's interesting because growing up, I don't think I grew up in either house. I lost a parent, my mum, when I was 7, and my dad brought me up along with some of my older siblings. But I now am with my partner, who's like a stoic Southeast Londoner, and her family are very, they're tough.
Yeah.
They're hard as nails, ironically. And I find it interesting because anytime I try and have a conversation around any of this stuff, it's almost, it's acknowledged, but it's, well.
But it's so every time I speak to the men, because I do work with men who start to see the benefits of sharing their feelings, but I always give them proviso, and I say, I think a partnership needs to be a partnership, right? And I think that as men start expressing their feelings, they need a partner that's able to deal with those feelings and actually support that person. Instead, it feels like we've created this word called man keeping, where all of a sudden, again, men are the problem because all of a sudden we're putting emotional burden on women. I understand it. I do understand it. I'm not sure how helpful it is. But we do have to recognise that when we've created a system where men are told not to ask for help and have never asked for help, not to show their feelings, when all of a sudden a man does do that, women aren't necessarily equipped to deal with that. Yeah, and so it takes time on both sides. And I think if we look at this changing system that we need, it needs us all to learn, unlearn and relearn. I talked about crying on stage on Wednesday, but it was so lovely because it's only the second time it's happened.
I was about to say, I'd love to hear that story.
Yeah, so it's only the second time it happened, and I'll tell you the story. But what was lovely is as I was crying, Rox came over to give me a hug. So again, Roxanne Hobbs is definitely one of my biggest allies. You know, she's taught me so much, been very patient with me. But she came up to give me a hug, but at the same time, the whole place went into a round of applause. And it was like a warm hug. And it's the second time it happened. You know, it happened to me on stage in Spain when I spoke at CDC. And all the women that had asked me to come and speak, just as soon I cried on stage there as well, just started clapping. And it was just like, it was so good. So come back, what's the story? So the story is simple. And I get emotional about this stuff because I've lost 2 people to suicide. You know, I don't want to. I think we talked earlier the things you didn't say. I wasn't mentally health first aid trained when my cousin came over here. We knew she'd been suffering, but I didn't ask her the questions I now know I should have asked. Right, so I have that tools. I have those tools now. So, you know, I've done it. You know, I've asked someone I didn't know very well on a call, stranger, are you having suicidal thoughts in front of everyone else? Right, and because I knew that I needed to know that, you know, and actually people think by saying that you're going to put people's thought. That's just been completely disproven. Anyway, so I'm giving you a context. So I didn't expect to cry, by the way, but I put a photo. Me and Sam were on Sky News, and I was painting Gareth, who's the presenter's nails, live. And what was hilarious about that was that was only the 3rd time I'd ever painted someone's nails. I wasn't qualified at that point. I was in the process of being qualified, but it was literally the 3rd time. He kept on for weeks. I was very impressed with myself. But I was, and because I'm doing this 100-man project, which is about which you're part of now, Danny. But, you know, it's part of redefining what masculinity could be. So I paint 100 men's nails and I ask them, what are the 3 words you would like masculinity to be associated with when you think about a more healthy form of masculinity? So because I had to hit 100 men, it's really hard. You know, that's. I think it was an average thing. Like initially, it was like 4 week I had to do, and I hadn't realised what a pressure I put myself under. So I went to a do lectures training.
Yeah.
And just in the first workshop, when we went into a little circle, there was me, one other man, and 7 women. Because there was one other man, I just said to him, I didn't give him any context. I just said, "Can I paint your nails at lunchtime?" And he just went, "Yeah, why not?" And I was like, "Wow, that's amazing." So, you know, I painted his nails at lunchtime. And when I finished, I walked past, and this woman said to me, Are you to do anything to do with Hard as Nails? I said, "Yeah, I'm the co-founder." She said, "Oh, yeah, well, I co-founded it with Sam." She goes, "Yeah, I follow Sam." And I said, "I just want to let you know, you saved 2 men's lives." And I was just gobsmacked. And I was like, okay, tell me more. She said, well, we go into hospitals. That's what I do as a business, our charity, go into hospitals to open up conversations so that people can actually come in and talk about stuff. And we saw you on Sky News. We thought, actually, what a lovely initiative. We're going to go into the hospital and we're going to offer to paint men's nails. And so they did it, and they did 2 sessions for it. And she said during those 2 sessions, 2 men came up to us and told us they had suicidal thoughts.
Wow.
And we've now given them support, everything around them, and they're alive today. So you've helped save those 2 men's lives. And it was, I think to a certain extent, that's why I feel passionate about this. We have an opportunity with Hard as Nails that it can be the most impactful thing I've ever done. But we have a challenge. We need to get funded. We can't just, we can't do it out of anything. So that's our challenge at the moment. What do we do next? How do we fund it? And just looking at those models. But if in a year's time we haven't done something major, I'd be really disappointed, because the impact, and I think I talked about it earlier, I said it wasn't an allyship position, but our researchers have said if your results were any better, no one would believe them. We have never seen anything have such a significant impact in such a short space of time. So what happens when people do get their nails painted is their view of masculinity shifts to a much more healthy view within 1 week. Within 1 week, just having their nails painted. Secondly, their level of empathy shifts significantly. So actually, even though we haven't created an allyship campaign, I think deep down I always knew that actually it would help men be better allies through just having that increased empathy.
As we draw this to a close, aside the fact that I'm actually going to get another manicure today, if you could give people permission to think, feel, do, say, act in a different way, what would that be?
I think the first thing, the advice I'd give to everyone, specifically the men, and then I'll go to everyone else, and women and non-binary people, but specifically the men, go and have a look at the man box. Yeah, look
Where do
at
they find the man box?
Just type into Google man box, you'll find it straight away. It's by Equimondo. So look that up and actually start to look at the seven pillars and work out which one is holding you back to being a better. Okay, it depends where you are in your life. I don't try and be a better man. I try and be a better human being. Yeah, fundamentally. But what can you do to be better? What can you do to be better for yourself? Yeah, and we had Professor Green on Wednesday at the event, and he said something. He was talking about specifically around fathers, and he said, to be a better father to your boy, you need to do the work on yourself first. And I thought that was just brilliant, because we all have to do the work. It's called the work for a reason. The document. Everyone asked me what movie do you think people should watch when it comes to this space, and I could reel off 10 movies, and I'll probably I'll give 5 in a minute. But the one that I always talk about is The Work, which is an amazing documentary in Folsom Prison, where Folsom Prison every year, this is amazing. You have to apply for it, but 35 civilians go into the prison and get therapy from prisoners. It is unbelievable, and you just see the damage that masculinity does in that. But again, if anyone's interested, do watch After Sun. The films you have to watch for me: After Sun, Nowhere Special. Make sure you've got tissues for that one. Another Round. And All of Us Strangers are must-watch films.
Funny, never heard any of them.
Oh, you have to watch them. I promise you, I've just made your life richer.
Love that. Daniele, thank you so much for coming on today. For anyone that wants to understand more about Hard as Nails, go online. Yeah,
just type it. I now test it on people's phones. If you type in Hard as Nails, you get the first search tends to be there is a nail salon, I think in Brixton, that's Hard as Nails with a Z. But about 4 or 5 down, you will find Hard as Nails. We are coming up, and if they want to follow me, just follow me on LinkedIn. I used to, for a year and a half, I posted every day on LinkedIn, but I just got tired. But I still do post.
And if people want to get involved, or their organisations get involved, get in touch with you.
Just link in with me.
Fantastic.
and send me a note.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on. I can't tell you, I mean, this is such an important topic, and I think, we've kind of veered away from maybe the normal format that we would, but I think to elevate the subject of men's mental health alongside everyone else's mental health, it's not exclusive, I think is absolutely critical. And the work you're doing, which is why I want to support it, is really important. So I look forward to people hearing this episode. Thank you so much.
Thank you.